are very grateful. So the stage is yours. Please share about these miracles that you do back in the science for doTERRA.
Well, you're welcome, and it's great to be here. I heard, if I understood correctly, I heard Maria talking about how we're all here because of one person. And I'm sure that there are many different reasons or thoughts behind that. Whether that's here in Bulgaria, whether that's here in doTERRA, whether that's here at this event, but I just have to share, I'm here today because of one person. This is Valia. That's Anova. A week ago, I didn't know if I would be able to make it because of other commitments and just everything that's going on. But Valia didn't give up on you. She didn't give up on me. And I'm here because of Valia, so.
Bravo!
Thank you. Woo-hoo! And I was also learning a little bit, do you say, здравите на всички? I was hearing a little bit about how successful you are here in Bulgaria with doTERRA, that Europe is the most dynamic, fastest growing market, and Bulgaria is one of the fastest growing regions in Europe. So you are the cream of the cream right here. Now, I like to tell people I have one of the best jobs in all of doTERRA. It's so fun. We have a wonderful team of scientists who get to be curious and creative and explore every day. And then we get to tell people about what we do. And it's so much fun. I love to understand how things work. So today I'm going to share some information. Hopefully it's new. Hopefully some of it you've heard before. But for everything, I hope it's helpful for you. I want to begin with this message, not as a discouragement, but as encouragement for what you currently have, what you currently know. The future wellness will not be driven by more products. It will be driven by better understanding. Don't get discouraged that we won't have more products, because we will have more products. We always launch new products, and I heard somebody mention that they love all of our products and when we bring out new products. But I really hope that you are understanding the depth of the products and the meaning behind them and how they work. And this is the understanding of what we want to communicate, help you to know and understand the products better. When we understand, our confidence goes up. And when we have more confidence, we are more likely to share. And when we can share, then other people are benefited, other people are blessed. So we're going to increase your understanding today. This picture of duplication, this is why we're all here. There's only one of us, right? But when we teach somebody else, and then they teach other people, this is duplication, this is magnification. So as I cover information today, I want you to be thinking about how you would teach somebody else. Maybe there's something that you're learning that you can share with a friend that you've talked about essential oils or doTERRA. And so keep this in mind, and this will help with the duplication. This will help you to see success and to bless other people. Sometimes people are introduced to essential oils, and if they're not familiar with essential oils, they can seem a little bit maybe abstract or confusing, and they wonder, what's an essential oil? Have you ever had a conversation and people wonder, what is an essential oil? Yeah, it's not intuitive. We don't necessarily grow up thinking or knowing what an essential oil is. And then when we start to talk about the impact, and we just heard 6 stories about the impact of these gifts of the earth, of the essential oils in people's lives. And we may wonder, how does this happen? Right? And so we're going to talk a little bit about how this happens. And you might even experience, if you think back to the very first time that you experienced an essential oil, you might wonder, wow, what is this experience that I'm having? And what is this chemistry? How can this small drop of essential oil have such a big impact on me? And it does, right? When we talk about the ability of essential oils to change our mood, or to give us energy, or to help calm us down if we're stressed. This is one of the benefits, several different categories of benefits of essential oils. And sometimes when we don't understand how things work, we might simply describe it as magic. Have you heard people think, oh, this is just, I don't know, it must be magic. Or they can even be more dismissive and say, it doesn't work, because they don't understand. But the way that essential oils work is through chemistry. The chemistry of the essential oils is key to the function of the essential oils. So all these categories about how oils impact our physiology, whether it's sleep or mood, healthy digestion, healthy inflammatory response, it's all because of the chemistry of essential oils. So I want to talk about chemistry. We'll talk about two main categories. We're going to talk about chemistry of the science of essential oils, and then we're going to talk about the importance of nutrition with one of our foundational products. So essential oils are chemical intelligence of plants. We've had a lot of conversation lately about natural intelligence. doTERRA, the name doTERRA means gift of the earth, right? And essential oils are gifts of the earth. Essential oils are composed of chemistry that plants produce. And there's a lot of detail and aspects of that chemistry, but this chemical intelligence, these are signaling molecules that plants are producing. Because plants need to be able to communicate as well. So as humans, we can get up, if we want to say hello to someone, we can get up and walk over and speak to them. If we're scared of something or we need to get away from danger, we can get up and move and go somewhere else. Plants are not able to do this. Plants can't move around. But they still need to be able to communicate with their environment. They need to be able to attract pollinators. They need to be able to discourage predators from eating them. There are lots of different ways that plants are using essential oil chemistry to communicate with the environment around them. And when we can take advantage of that same chemical intelligence and use that chemistry inside of our bodies, we can also be benefited. So we'll talk about the chemistry of essential oils. And if we look at we've heard of, if you've been with doTERRA for any amount of time, probably more than 2 weeks, which I imagine everybody has, you've heard the term GCMS, right? Or gas chromatography mass spectrometry. And it sounds complicated. It's a methodology or a scientific instrument to be able to look at the chemistry of an essential oil. Because even when we look at a drop of essential oil, maybe we take frankincense or lavender or orange, and we pour a drop of oil out, and they might look almost identical. Then you smell them. They're not identical, right? Even similar oils like orange, grapefruit, tangerine, lemon, they're all citruses. And on a chromatogram, they might look very similar from a chemistry perspective, with limonene being the predominant chemistry. But if you smell those different citrus oils, you can tell the difference, right? You can tell the difference. Your brain can tell the difference, and your brain responds to that chemistry. And this is why when we talk about purity and adulteration and consistency, that level of detail is important for how essential oils work. Now, essential oils are natural, complex substances. Sometimes we like to simplify our discussion around the chemistry of essential oils. Maybe we talk about orange and we say limonene, or peppermint and we say menthol, or lavender or linalool. But it's not so simple. It's not just one constituent. There are many different constituents, and they're all important. We talk about adulteration. If there was only menthol, it wouldn't perform the same as the full fingerprint. We talk about a GCMS fingerprint for an essential oil. This is the ratios that nature produces of the chemistry from the plant. They're natural complex substances, and that complexity matters. So are there any scientists with us today? I imagine we have some. People who may recognize this term, the functional groups of chemistry. In chemistry, we talk about functional groups. These are terms, you may have heard them from doTERRA events or discussions. We talk about alcohols, aldehydes, ketones, esters, terpenes. These are all classes of functional groups. And these functional groups, as I've circled here, they are the structural chemistry of an essential oil. This is where the magic happens. This is how the chemistry of an essential oil interacts with the chemistry of our bodies. So we have electrons that are constantly being exchanged. And when electrons of a functional group are exchanged with the electrons of our body, those compounds from essential oil are able to interact with our body. And they interact on the surface of cells. When a constituent can bind to a channel and cause that channel to stay open. Or maybe they interact with an olfactory receptor in our nose, which triggers electrical activity in our brain. These functional groups are how the oils work. So if someone is wondering, how do essential oils work? You can smell them, you can feel them, you can experience essential oils. This is where that function is happening, is at the chemistry level. So I want to take an example of peppermint. Sometimes it's helpful if we just understand one example and we can just share it with other people, right? The duplication. So we're all familiar with peppermint. Peppermint is a very experiential essential oil, and we recognize menthol coming from peppermint. Another reason peppermint is, so there's a few reasons peppermint is a great example to share with people. It's very versatile. You can use it aromatically, topically, internally. People are familiar with peppermint. They've tasted it, they've smelled it. And the menthol, you can describe how it interacts with the physiology of the body. So let's talk about that. Menthol is cooling. It's an alcohol, and you can tell that by the OL ending, menthol, as an alcohol. So it's cooling, and you can experience that cooling sensation. So as you teach people in a duplication model about how the chemistry of essential oils works, you can describe this cooling sensation. And that primary constituent peak there is menthol. Now, as I just mentioned, you can use peppermint oil and experience menthol in all three primary ways that we use essential oils: aromatically, topically, internally. And then you can also use it for a variety of use cases. We know peppermint is a major component in digestion. We have peppermint beadlets. We have enteric peppermint soft gels. These are designed to support digestion. We have peppermint in our Deep Blue products that is cooling and calming to the skin as a relief for a topical application. So what is the way that some of these interactions happen? Menthol, whether we're using it aromatically, topically, or internally, will interact with different types of cells in our body. When we inhale it, it binds to olfactory receptors and it stimulates electrical activity in the brain. And this can give us energy. It can help us to stay focused and wake up. When we apply peppermint topically, the menthol will actually bind to a channel gate and keep that gate open. The menthol props that gate open and allows calcium and sodium to flow into the TRPM8 cell. You don't have to remember TRPM8. Some of you might remember TRPM8, but it's just a type of cell in your skin. When you put menthol on your skin and menthol blocks that gate open, calcium and sodium can flow into that nerve cell. And that's a type of sensitization. So when you talk about peppermint on the skin being relieving, that it it helps to soothe topically. This is how that is happening. It's not magic, it's just chemistry. And then internally, if you're using peppermint internally, the menthol, that same menthol that you are inhaling or applying topically, you can ingest it and it will bind to calcium channels in the smooth muscle of your digestive tract and cause that smooth muscle tissue to relax. So the same chemistry of one essential oil, depending on how you use it, can have a different effect on the body. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
It's just one example, and every oil can have a similar story. But peppermint is a great example to teach people about how versatile, how flexible the essential oils are. And when we understand the chemistry of essential oils and how to use them, we can be more effective in benefiting from their chemistry. There are different advantages to how we use essential oils. If we're using them aromatically, it's very fast, right? You breathe it in, you get an experience right away. And for people who are not familiar with essential oils, they might, if you ask them, have you heard of essential oils? And maybe they say no. And you say, oh, have you ever walked through a forest? And they say, oh, of course I have. Have you ever smelled a flower? Of course I have. You're experiencing essential oils. Have you ever smelled the peel of an orange? And of course they have. Or even the foods that we eat. So people have experience with essential oils even if they don't know it. And one of the primary ways they do is through olfaction or the aromatic delivery. So you can teach people about that. And then topically, if we're using essential oils topically, we have a very focused, very narrow application in one spot that needs help. We talk about frankincense in a localized application with our frankincense stick, or serenity, or our deep blue products that we're applying locally on the skin surface. And then internally, one of the biggest advantages of internal use is that we get systemic distribution throughout the entire body. Because when we ingest something and it can be absorbed, then it can circulate in our blood and it can bind to different types of cell surface proteins and different types of enzymes and interact with our bodies in different ways, in different places. It can also be metabolized by the liver into primary, secondary metabolites, and those other metabolites are very beneficial to our health. So, aromatic use, emotion, memory. There's been some really interesting studies that people who smell, in fact, we could spend hours talking about memories from our childhood, right? When maybe you smell a chocolate chip cookie or some treat and it takes you back to when you were a child. Memory is tightly connected with scent or aroma. So people have done studies looking at memory recall when they study with a specific aroma and then they smell that aroma later, they're able to better remember what they were studying. This is pretty fascinating. And then topicals are mentioned, whether it's soothing, cooling, warming, localized topical issues with the skin. This is a great way to use it, and we have, whether it's castor oil or fractionated coconut oil or stick products, there's lots of ways that we can use and apply essential oils topically. Internally, we get the broadest impact through metabolism and circulation of these chemical constituents, this natural intelligence that we are pulling in from plants into our bodies. So there's a really nice equation that we like to share, talking about purity plus consistency equals safety and efficacy. What do we mean by purity? We talk about the importance of purity. We usually refer to adulteration, right? That we don't want to have things that shouldn't be in essential oils. And this is one of the problems with the essential oil market, is that there's a lot of adulteration that happens. And this changes how that chemistry interacts with the body. Remember the example I shared about citrus oils. When we have maybe bergamot, wild orange, tangerine, lemon, they look similar chemically, but you smell them, your body can tell the difference. And if you have adulteration in an essential oil, your body can tell the difference. You don't want things in an essential oil that shouldn't be there. And so purity is very important. Consistency is also critical. We spend a lot of resources, a lot of focus and attention on consistency of the chemistry of essential oils. I've taken some time to explain why the chemistry is important. That the chemistry is how the oils interact with our bodies. So we need to have consistency. If we don't have consistency in the chemistry, how can we have consistency in the efficacy? We can't. We need to have purity and consistency to have safety and efficacy. If a product isn't safe or effective, would you use it?
Nope.
No, you wouldn't, right? There would be no reason to use a product that isn't safe or effective. It could be dangerous, and it would certainly be a waste of your resources and your time. So if we can ensure that you have a pure and consistent product, you can have a safe and effective outcome. And that's why we spend so much time and effort at doTERRA making sure that our products are pure and consistent.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. So this comment about your body responding to chemistry, not to a label. Sometimes people who don't understand the details that we all understand about essential oil chemistry, they might see a label and they will see lavender. Lavender is lavender is lavender, right? And that's not necessarily true. When you have adulteration or you have inconsistency in the chemistry, your body will respond differently, sometimes not in a good way. So your body doesn't respond to the label, your body responds to the chemistry. And this is also a message to remember when they talk about the importance of nutrition, because the label only tells part of the story. The label doesn't tell what gets into your body, or what form of nutrient that is, or how it's interacting with the body. So this is certainly relevant to essential oil chemistry. Now, in Bulgaria, of course, you're familiar with lavender,
Yes.
and when you talk about consistency, we have a great depth of understanding about the different species of lavender, about the chemistry of lavender, where it should grow, when it should be harvested, how it should be distilled, so that you can have that consistent chemistry. And doTERRA is minding or attending to these details in a way that no other company is aware of those details. And I wasn't here in time, because I just flew in this afternoon. I wasn't here to hear Emily speak. I imagine that she talked about sourcing. She is, of course, involved in all the details of sourcing. And so I'm sure you got a great discussion about this, but this is a little bit of a reminder. We have foundational essential oils. You might consider this a toolkit, right? We have a lot of different oils. These foundational essential oils are so versatile. They're so core to what we offer. And if you look at any of these oils, we could spend an hour talking about any one of them, the chemistry, how they work, how you might use them, the studies that have been done on them. But simply, if I was getting familiar with essential oils, these are some core oils that I would focus on. Not only for myself, but to be able to teach other people about essential oils. These cover a great deal of benefits across doTERRA. So there's a rich tradition of history in using essential oils. That history has now come into modern understanding, including the science of essential oils. We are engaged in a lot of different clinical trials and understand the pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics of essential oils and how they interact with the body. But when we understand a little bit of the chemistry, and hopefully there's some examples that you understood and you can share with other people, when we understand better, we can duplicate, we can share with others and build their confidence. Now, this discussion about understanding a little bit more than what's on the label extends not only to essential oils, but also to nutrition. So we're going to talk a little bit now about one of our foundational products. And to set the stage, I'll remind you that essential oils are chemical intelligence, right? Plants can't get up and run, they can't run away, they can't attract people. So they produce compounds that are signaling molecules. They're intelligence for the plants. And food is the same for our bodies. Nutrients, micronutrients, macronutrients, they are instructions. They're not only sustenance or energy. They don't just help us keep living from day to day. But the nutrients of food communicate information to our bodies and how to respond, different cells. So talk a little bit about what that means. There's unfortunately a challenge in today's modern world. We have hidden hunger. Why do we say it's hidden? It's under the surface. It's not obvious. But when we look around in our convenience stores, we can recognize that we've traded quality for convenience, right? This happens, unfortunately. We're so busy and we're in such a hurry that we trade quality for convenience, and it doesn't always show up right away. The consequences don't show up in a minute. But compounded, this trade-off starts to show up, not only in the individual, but across society. So as we look around in our communities, in our families, in our communities, and around the world, we see the consequences of trading quality for convenience. And the example there is around ultra-processed food. You've heard of this term, ultra-processed food?
Yep, unfortunately.
So this extra processing, sometimes I don't even know that we should be saying ultra-processed food. We should just be saying ultra-processed
something.
chemicals, right? Because it doesn't actually look like anything that we should be calling food, right? It can't even closely resemble what we would pull from a garden, for example. So, unfortunately, in this push for convenience, we have traded nutrient-dense foods for foods that are devoid or empty of nutrition. And this is having negative consequences in ourselves and in society. So we want to help to close this gap, address the issue. And this has been a focus with doTERRA for, since the beginning. Actually, we've had, with our wellness chart, with the wellness pyramid, we have an important focus at the base with nutrition and digestion. So we want to help address this. If you look at this picture of VMG+, it could look a little
green,
maybe forgettable or boring. Nothing too fancy there. And if you even look, if I had a sachet of VMG+, it wouldn't necessarily look like anything special. But just like a drop of essential oil, when you look at the chemistry of the essential oil, you understand the ratios. And now we're going to dive into the powder of VMG+ and understand better what is actually in this formula. Where does it come from? Why did we design this product the way that we did? Why is this so foundational to our health and wellness? Then this depiction of a simple sachet becomes not boring, but it becomes so critical to supporting our daily health, wellness, vitality, success, how we show up in the world. So talk more about this. Now, when we set out to design VMG+, remember I shared the example of peppermint. And one of the things I love so much about essential oils is that they are experiential. You don't have to wonder if you're experiencing an essential oil, right? You can't mistake it.
Yeah.
All you have to do is open a bottle and you can experience an essential oil. It's so simple and unmistakable. We wanted to have an experience with foundational nutrition that provides the same type of experience. We wanted to have a product that people would look forward to using on a daily basis and experiencing this foundational nutrition. And this was part of the reason it was designed the way it was, with the formulation in the dose format that it is, that we can experience this not simply as taking another pill and wondering, is this doing anything? Am I having an experience? And we can have that experience with VMG+, and we'll talk about some of the science and the chemistry. So this paradox of hidden hunger that I mentioned earlier If we look around the world at the nutritional population demographics, you would see that much of the world is deficient in micronutrients. For example, more than 70% of the world's population is deficient in vitamin D. And if you look at people, you wouldn't necessarily know this. But if you tested their blood and you look at the micronutrient levels, you would see that there's major gaps that show up in people's nutritional status. And so we want to help to close this gap. At the same time, you could look around the world and see and realize people are consuming food, right? There's lots of food. We talk about ultra-processed chemistry or foodstuffs, but they're devoid of nutritional value. And so we want to help close that gap. And people have full stomachs, but empty stomachs that are empty of nutritional value. And VMG helps to close that gap. So again, this crisis that is showing up in cities and communities all around the world, including here in Bulgaria, if you looked down the street, you would see people hustling and bustling and rushing here and there and focusing on convenience at the expense of quality in that trade-off, and it shows up in our communities. It doesn't always show up immediately, right? It won't always show up from one day to the next, but it catches up with us, right? And this is oftentimes how it shows up in our own lives. We feel run down. We feel like our memory isn't as sharp as it used to be. Maybe our immune system isn't as resilient as it used to be. Maybe we find ourselves getting extra irritable with how we're interacting with other people. And all of these experiences that we have are part of a clue that something is off. There's a gap somewhere that we should be focusing on to help us improve our quality of life. The fortunate thing is that we are resilient. So our bodies don't hold a grudge. Meaning, when we provide the building blocks, the nutrients, the natural intelligence from essential oils, from good nutrition, when we supply our bodies with these components, then our body will respond. And that's guaranteed. So fortunately, even though there's this hidden hunger and there's this hidden crisis, we can do a lot to impact it in our own lives and in the lives of our loved ones. So our bodies will respond to what we give them. Now, reminder for the scaffolding of our decisions. doTERRA is focused on not just healthy lifestyle choices, or not just amazing products, but also healthy lifestyle choices, that they go together. And this wellness chart helps to explain the relationship there between our products and the healthy lifestyle choices. And nutrition and digestion, eating good foods, closing the gaps with a foundational nutrition product like VMG Plus is critical. So we understand far more today than they did hundreds of years ago, right? Science helps us to understand the why. Even before, we could really understand what was going on. Historically, I want to share some stories from some examples from history. And so, like the example of peppermint essential oil, I'm including these stories from history that you can share with other people, right? Remember the duplication model. So these stories now you can share with other people. Why is nutritional status so important? Well, long ago, when people would go out sailing the world and exploring, they didn't have access to the nutrients that they needed, that their bodies needed. So they'd be out on a ship, and you can imagine being on a ship sailing around the world. You don't have access to the same foods that you should. And so sailors would develop this, what they call the sailor's curse. And it's better understood, known as scurvy. It's a deficiency in vitamin C. But at the time, these explorers that went sailing, they didn't know that vitamin C is important to help maintain the tissues, the collagen, the structural integrity. So their teeth would fall out and their skin would get saggy, and they didn't know what was going on. But then when they added vitamin C to their ships from citrus fruits, it solved the problem. They no longer have this vitamin C deficiency. They were able to address what was going on, this scurvy. Even though they didn't understand the science behind it, it solved the problem. More recently, in the 1900s, in the United States, there were communities that subsisted largely on corn products. And these communities developed a disease called pellagra. And they thought it was a communicable disease, something that they could share with each other. So people would isolate themselves. They built hospitals to keep people who were suffering from this pellagra away from other people. But it was not a communicable disease. It was a nutritional deficiency because of their diet. They weren't getting the vitamin B3 that they needed, niacin. And so when they had access then to the vitamin B3 from a more comprehensive diet, this pellagra condition went away. And then at the time of the Industrial Revolution, where there was a lot of soot and smog in the air and it blocked out sunlight, sunlight comes and it will interact with our skin, and it causes a reaction in our skin to convert to produce vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is a prohormone that is so important for many, many different reactions in the body. One of these types of reactions for children is the development of their musculoskeletal structure. So there's a condition called rickets. And in the Industrial Revolution, when the sunlight was blocked out and children were not able to make vitamin D3, they suffered in their bones and they had bowed legs. And then when these children began to be supplemented with cod liver oil that contained vitamin D, then the issue went away. So we have examples from history, even before the science understood what was going on, that people saw demonstrated the importance of getting these micronutrients. And we provide these micronutrients in VMG+. So the science now has a much better understanding of which nutrients are required, at what levels, in what are the optimal dose formats. And we have pulled that into a product like VMG+. Sometimes we get the question, people will ask, well, is it enough if I just eat a good diet? Well, absolutely, we recommend you eat a good diet. However, the agroeconomy has misaligned incentives. What do I mean by that? We have an example here, a picture of an apple. Apples used to be small, and small might look like small impact, but actually they had quite the impact. These apples had a very high nutrient density, but the misaligned incentives were that they weren't large. And so if people who are growing apples were paid based on volume, then they wouldn't be incentivized to have a nutrient-dense but small apple, right? They would go through selective hybridization to have large apples that didn't have the nutritional value. So over time, what has happened is the density, the nutritional density of our food has decreased. So it is a good idea, and we recommend and encourage everyone to have a balanced diet. But unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, the nutritional value of the diet has gone down. So people still experience these gaps. And VMG was designed to help close the gaps. And as you use a product like VMG+, you have nutrient stores that allow your body to draw from. So when we have, maybe we're fighting an illness, or maybe we're dealing with extra stress, when we have nutrient reserves in our body that we can pull from, we have resilience. We're able to respond to the stresses that we that we run into. Now I want to talk about the chemistry, the science of VMG Plus a little bit. We talked about the chemistry of essential oils. We'll talk about the chemistry of VMG Plus. 5 blends: nutrition blend, cellular support blend, superfood blend, biotransformation blend, and bioavailability boosting blend. The nutrition blend is at the core. Sometimes if you just hear nutrition blend, it might seem kind of forgettable, nothing exciting about it. Nutrition blend is one of the most differentiating aspects of VMG Plus. The nutrition blend is composed of superfoods. The example I shared of the apples, that you used to have an apple that was very small but very, very dense in nutrients. And these 4 botanicals, the amla, guava, moringa, and lemon, these are considered superfoods. We've started to highlight and tell the story of these botanical sources in VMG, as they are a critical differentiator. And so in the sourcing of these nutrients, these natural nutrients and compounds, it's not just a single isolated compound, vitamin or mineral. We have a complex network of phytochemistry. So back to the example of peppermint. Peppermint essential oil is not only menthol. It is menthol, but there are other compounds, there are other constituents in peppermint essential oil besides menthol. In superfoods, we have vitamins and minerals, but not only vitamins and minerals. If these vitamins and minerals were made in a laboratory, you would just have one single isolated vitamin.